Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Nat Eliason, and welcome to Nat Chat, where, as you know, or are just finding out, we're currently focusing on what to do as a college student or recent graduate who feels they don't fit in this world of grades, classes, and one-size-fits-all careers. In this episode, we have a very special guest, Charlie Hoehn. When Charlie graduated college in 2008, he was entering one of the worst job markets in history and was completely unable to get work anywhere. He eventually gave up throwing out resumes on monster.com and started cold emailing successful entrepreneurs, offering to work for them for free in order to learn on the job, which eventually led to him working with Ramit Sethi, Tucker Max, and then as Tim Ferriss's first full-time hire. He took everything he learned from landing those opportunities and wrote about it in a book called Recession Proof Graduate, which has been read by hundreds of thousands of people since its publication a few years ago. And this was a really special interview for me because when I was in college, Charlie's work and the Recession Proof Graduate book actually inspired me to get my first couple mentors and apprenticeships and really helped me rethink work and learning, which we talked about a bit in the beginning. There's a second reason I wanted to bring Charlie on, though, which is his more recent work around living a more playful life, especially as a way to manage anxiety. A few years post-graduation, he ended up in a really dark place, which he talks about during the episode, and the thing that really cured him of his self-destructive workaholic tendencies was bringing more play into his life, and now he helps others do the same. It might seem odd to talk about goofing off and throwing around frisbees in a show that talks about being driven and going after these big things in your life, but I think it's just as important that we keep these ideas in mind and not take ourselves or our work too seriously. It's really easy to lose the ability to just relax and have fun and to get sucked into work guilt. And Charlie's approach to bringing more play into your life has been really helpful for me and countless other people he's reached through his book, Play It Away, and now through this new book he's currently running a Kickstarter for, Play for a Living. So in the episode, we cover how to get apprenticeships, why free work is a great place to start for that, what makes good outreach, how to teach yourself skills that you can sell in cold pitches and, to successful entrepreneurs, and why and how to develop a more playful approach to life, and a ton more. If you enjoy it, definitely hit Charlie up on Twitter at Charlie Hoehn, that's Hoehn. And as always, you'll be able to find all the show notes on my site at nateliason.com/podcast. And with that, let's welcome Charlie to the show. Charlie, welcome to the cast, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Nat. Thanks for having me.
And we're going to get to the normal intros and stuff in a second, but I first wanted to say congrats on hitting the fundraising goal for this latest book you're releasing, Play for a Living, Quotes from People Who Found Joy in Their Work and Changed the World.
Thanks, bud. Yeah, we've we raised 10,000 in 35 hours, so it was a huge relief for us.
And you're going
to get funding.
Yeah, well, you're going to be one of the first episodes that comes out, so it should still be up on Kickstarter when people hear this, so they can go grab a copy too.
Cool.
We're going to come back to that a little bit later, but I wanted to actually start with, well, first off, if you run into someone at a cocktail party or, playing in the park, how do you introduce yourself?
Oh man, this is the most difficult question, right? So
yeah.
Generally now I like to say I help authors market their ideas just because that's what I've been known for. So I've done a lot of content marketing basically, but I'm also an author and a speaker myself. And I do a lot of videography as well. So there's a longer answer, but generally speaking, I help authors with their ideas and help those ideas get attention. So I've worked with guys like Tucker Max and Tim Ferriss and Ramit Sethi and on. And yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into a lot of that work because I think that you have a ton to contribute to this audience really in two areas. So your ideas and the strategies around how you ended up working with those people, and then also a lot of what you learned about managing anxiety that went into this latest book and the book before that. So what I wanted to start with was actually some of the ideas in your first book, Recession Proof Graduate, because I don't know if I ever told you this, that actually had a huge impact on me when I was in college. And I used the strategies in it to start reaching out to people kind of in the internet marketing scene, which was actually how I met our mutual friend, Justin.
Hmm.
Uh, so, yeah, Recession Proof Graduate, amazing book for college students. Can you briefly explain sort of the methodology and the techniques in it and what the goal of the book is?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nat. So before I explain that, would you tell the story of how you used it to meet Justin specifically?
Yeah, of course. Well, my junior year of college, I had started a startup. I'd taken a year off of school. I was working on that and I was shutting it down. And as I was shutting it down, it was my senior fall then, and I had basically no jobs lined up. Philosophy degree, not super helpful for that. And I knew I didn't want to go to a corporate job or anything. I kind of wanted
Hmm.
to keep learning more of the marketing side because I realized working on that startup that I thought I had some idea how to market a product. I really had no idea. So I just started reaching out to different, relatively well-known internet marketers, and I reached out to a few, Kevin at Buffer, a couple of others. But then with Justin, it actually almost happened on accident where we just got into a conversation because we were in a similar alumni network for the incubator that I went through with my startup. And we just started talking, and I said, "Hey, like you wrote this book, Traction. I'd love to come take on any like extra marketing, consulting work that you have that I could maybe help with." And I offered doing it for free, but he actually said like, I'd rather pay you. And so hard to say no to that. And then I took contracts from him for about 3 months, and then we ended up working together on our own project, Programming for Marketers. So it really worked. The stuff in the book, the first few
Yeah,
I got turned down from, but then with Justin, like we've been friends ever since.
that's so cool, man. And that course I've seen it did really well. I loved your article that you wrote about that. But what I really love about that is that you guys became good friends. I know you and Justin are good friends now, and I've had so many people tell me that the relationships they were able to form because of the principles in Recession Proof Graduate with these people who are not only like-minded like them, but people that they thought I just couldn't get in touch with them
Mm-hmm.
previously. I think the big insight in Recession Proof Graduate is the freedom that you have to connect with anybody. A lot of us just know that we can. You can get on Twitter and tweet something at Kim Kardashian, and well, you're connected, but she's going to ignore you, right?
Right.
Recession Proof Graduate really teaches you how to communicate with people uh, outside of your social circle who are either influential or people that you really want to work with, and get them to pay attention and say yes to you. And I think that's really the big thing there is you stand out uh, among all the cold emails that they're getting, whether you want a job or whether you want to set up an apprenticeship. It's the best way I've personally found for people to stand out, get noticed, and get hired. So my story is similar to yours, Nat, so where I was. It was the reason the book is called Recession Proof Graduate, which I'm thinking about retitling now, to be honest,
It's
because
been a while,
it's
so
it's too limiting, and recession is not in vogue anymore. But I graduated from college in 2008, and every day that summer I applied to jobs that I did not want. I spent a ton of time on Career Builder and Craigslist and Monster.com. I was getting emailed jobs from my parents, and my friends and I would get together on the weekends and we'd have some beers, and we were all doing the same thing, and we were like, man, this really sucks
yeah.
because none of these companies A are responding to us, and B, we don't want to work for them. So this is just like a guaranteed path to misery. But at the same time, we just felt the pinch. We got to pay the bills. Like we got to move forward. We can't live in our parents' basements forever eating hot pockets. We gotta figure this out. And I remember one of the breaking points for me was when a friend of mine was so excited, and they said, I just got a sales rep position at Verizon Wireless. And I used to knock Verizon. I sound like a typical ridiculous millennial, I guess, when I do that. But I really that struck some fear into me, where I was like, if this is the best possible outcome, like if this is a friend who's succeeding right now, then I need to seriously rethink my strategy. So the the promise I made my parents, I said, look, I've spent months applying to over 100 jobs. It's not working. It's just not,
Yeah.
and so it's a recession, no one's hiring, and I don't have any experience that separates me from any of these other college graduates who are fighting for the same job. So here's the deal I'll make. I'm going to spend the next 2 months just trying to do what I want to do, working with people I want to work with. Um, and if I don't get any momentum, I will take a landman job, basically an oil industry type job that pays $70,000 right out the gate. Um, and so,
Wait, sorry, just to interrupt. Why an oil job?
oh yeah, I should say that. Yeah, my dad knew a bunch of people in that industry, and like from since graduation, he was like, "Look, if money's like the big thing for you, like I can always show you how to get a job doing that."
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to do it because I knew, for one, it entailed going to places like North Dakota and living there and spending a lot of time just in the archives, like looking through papers. And two, I'm just much more creative, and I just knew that wasn't my field. But I wanted to, give myself something to work towards. So I I was doing a virtual internship with like 100 plus people across the world with Seth Godin at the time. And when that internship ended, I started reaching out to my favorite bloggers, who at the time, the first one I reached out to was Ramit Sethi, who was writing for I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is an amazing like business now, right?
Yeah, it's huge.
If any, yeah, so if you're not familiar, Ramit makes these really wonderful courses that teach people how to become professionals in their careers, basically, and how to live a richer life. And but back then he was still getting his start. He was still getting up on his feet, and so I offered to work with him for free after I looked at some areas of his site that I thought could use help. So I have a background in editing video. So I said, look, after I looked at Ramit's YouTube channel, I said, wow, this guy's a natural on video, but he never does it. It's crazy. Why wouldn't he do more video? So I told him, like, I love your site, Ramit. It's made a huge impact on me. I noticed that you could use some help editing video, and this is going to make a much bigger impact on your business. Video converts better than text. It'll build a relationship with your readers, blah, blah, blah. I'll do it for free. I'll edit all your videos. I'll do whatever. So he's like, done. So I started doing his videos. We worked together for a few months. I did the same thing with Tucker Max. I did the same thing, but both of those guys introduced me and recommended me to Tim Ferriss. And Tim and I actually ended up working together for 3 years. He hired me on as his first full-time employee, right? And this was at the height of like Tim Ferriss had written The 4 Hour Work Week, which is still one of the best-selling business books of all time. He was a hot commodity, right? Very difficult to get in touch with, and I found myself in this world where I was like, I'm a 23-year-old kid, and I'm sitting across the table from my heroes, and they're recommending me to their friends. Just it was no more than 2 years ago. I was sitting in my parents' basement typing on the ping pong table uh, because it's just like hammering out job applications. I didn't
Yeah.
have any of these connections. I just had the ambition and the desire to do stuff that I cared about with people that I thought were doing good work. And that's what changed everything. And that's why I wrote Recession Proof Graduate. And people like yourself, smart people like you, Nat, who are ambitious, know how to use those principles and make stuff happen.
Yeah, I mean, the methodology in it is, I mean, it's fairly simple and straightforward to implement, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's a little counterintuitive, I think, to people who haven't seen it before. I know when I read it, my kind of reaction was like, oh, duh. Like, of course I should be doing this.
I know. Here's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
Because people, every now and then I'll get resistance and being like, free work, oh,
Ah,
that's just slavery. Or like,
yeah.
why wouldn't you charge for your time? Nonsense. Nonsense. Totally wrong. Because you just spent 17 years in an education system that demanded that you do their work for free in exchange for grades.
Yeah.
Grades don't mean anything in the real world. They mean nothing.
Did Tim Ferriss ask to see your transcript?
Not once. He didn't
Yeah.
care where I went to college either.
Yeah.
Like he didn't care what my degree was. All people care about is, can you help them get the results that they're trying to get? And can you do it without being a burden to them? And
Yeah.
if you can do that, if you can be a person who's like positive, who's not going to give up, who's reliable, who shows up, who's kind, these qualities that are instilled in you from an early age for most of us, like doing these things is not outside of the realm of possibility. So I just hated the defeatist attitude of like, well, guess we're doomed to apply to lame corporate jobs and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you're young, if you just got out of school, you don't have any real responsibilities to yourself, you deserve it. After spending a decade and a half following other people's rules, following their agenda to
Mhm.
create your own. And it'll be hard. It'll require you to work. You won't get paid for a short period of time, but more than likely, you're going to have some life-changing experiences and set yourself up for much bigger success later on. And you'll know how to do um, the kind of things that you need to do in order to succeed at the level of your heroes.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something right there about not maybe getting paid for a little bit. And I think that that is maybe one of the scarier parts for people with going after this, especially after they graduate.
Right.
Was it hard for you to make ends meet in the beginning? How did you pull that off?
I pulled it off by doing a lot of like basically freelance side work.
Okay.
So I was continuing to sharpen my skills. So I did, like, for instance, I did consulting for local companies. I did video editing. I did as much video work as I could because that still is like a skill to me. That's really I just love it. I get so much joy out of it. I was doing everything I could that I was halfway decent at. I remember designing brochures and marketing material for insurance companies. I was just hustling,
Yeah.
and I lowered my costs as much as I reasonably could. And when you're young and scrappy and hungry for that, that's not that crazy to do. I mean, it's just not. You don't need all that much. And frankly, like uh, all the guys that I worked with were like Tim allowed me to stay at his place for a month. Tucker, I mean, Tucker and I lived together for a year. He allowed me to live with him for a long time. Like all of these guys have been super supportive because I mean, and here's the thing. I reached out to Tucker, for instance, in 2009,
Hmm.
and we started doing work on marketing stuff. And then that progressed to me being his videographer. Now I work at Book in a Box, the company he founded. Um, we've done a podcast together. Like these relationships that I started with a cold email have carried on for close to a decade.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
And I mean, it's really, it's a cool illustration of how you never know where these, what might seem like one-off emails might take you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of my closest friends now is a guy who cold emailed me a few years ago.
So did he use your techniques on you?
Pretty much, but he didn't. Actually, he did. He did. But he never read Recession Proof Graduate because he just like knows how to do this stuff. Um, he read my other book, Play It Away, and he
Uh-huh.
was like, dude, it helped me overcome this horrible period of my life where I just couldn't explain what I was going through mentally. And he was like, I see that you're trying to do more speaking gigs. Like I've been a professional speaker for 10 years. Like, let me help you start that as a business. I'll do it for free because I owe you. And yeah, I mean, like he and I talk all the time now.
That's great.
Yeah.
You probably get a good number of people reaching out with your own techniques on you, right?
Nat, I actually so like book sales for Recession Proof Graduate have kind of halted because of the title. To be honest, I
Oh.
it's the reason. So I don't get them as much, but I mean, I did a course called Land a Job You Love, so where I taught the same principles, but just in a little bit more structured format. That's I think a little bit easier to follow.
Mhm.
So I see a lot of these pitches still, and I see really good ones and I see a lot of bad ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to ask about is what makes the really good ones stand out? Because I imagine
Yeah.
that there are going to be a lot of people listening to this who
Yeah.
are going to, hopefully listen to it and then go out and start reaching out to people. So what actually makes those great ones stand out in your mind?
Yeah. Sincerity. The number one thing is sincerity. So I know there are people that are probably listening who are like just on the edge of their seats, like, yes, I can't wait to meet this famous person or whatever. Like, I wasn't gunning for Tim Ferriss and Tucker Max because they were famous. Like, I legitimately had value to offer to them because I was a huge fan of their work, and I saw areas where they could do more. Right.
Right.
I came to them not. I also came to them not just as a fan, but as an equal, or I at least talk to them on that level. And that is a huge thing is like you can't just be a gushing fan. You can't simply be somebody who's like, I love what you do. This is a terrible pitch. I love what you do. It's made a huge impact on me. I'd love to work for you for free. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Like I'll
Yeah.
do anything. Just assign me. That's a horrible email because you've just given them work. You just said, I haven't done any thinking on this matter. I'm just excited. And they're going to ignore you because they have, you need to say like, you need to have done your homework. I knew exactly where those guys were with what they were currently working on, what they were trying to accomplish, and where they were ultimately trying to go. So I could speak to them on their level or fairly close. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, but you know, you can never really know what's going on behind the scenes at a company or whatever." It's like if they have an online presence, you can get a pretty good idea if you're
Right.
smart. Like you can put the pieces together. Or you can see opportunities based on what their competitors are doing. That's another alternative is to say, hey, you know, have you considered doing more of this? Somebody similar has been doing this and they've been getting these results. I was thinking like, let's say, you know, let's use webinars as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that this company has been experimenting with webinars and it looks like it's working out really well for them advertising on Facebook. The cost of this is probably, you know, a couple $100 a day in terms of Facebook ads. Why don't we run an experiment? Why don't we run a test and try this for a week? I'll put the webinar together. you don't have to do much of any work except show up and talk through the webinar or whatever,
Yeah.
right? That is much more valuable because you're being specific. You're giving them a reason why they should do that. And if you can provide some social proof, even stronger, right? Like everybody's got at least one interesting thing they can say to make themselves sound like an expert, or or you can show something that makes you seem legit, right?
Right.
So I've worked with this person. I got X number of sales in X number of weeks. Or my conversion rate is this percentage.
I know that we're going to have at least a few people listening who are saying, "Oh, I don't have anything that I can say."
Bullshit.
Right?
It's totally wrong. You really do have to think about like what are the number. Just think, right? So if you've been doing videography, for instance, and you've only been doing it for 8 months, how many videos have you made? How many minutes of video have you put on YouTube? Oh, I don't have 1,000 subscribers. Great. How many hours of video have you edited so far?
Yeah.
Like quantify something and put it in terms that people can understand and they can say, okay, at least there's something there. And if you don't have that, make something, right? So one of the reasons that Ramit hired me to do his video was because I sent him a sample video that I'd just been playing around with. I said, this is my most recent video. I was just messing around with this as a concept where I won't even explain the video. It's kind of funny now, but
right, now we're curious.
He saw the video. All right, I'll explain what the video is. So, the Think Different Apple ad?
Yeah.
So I sent this to Ramit in 2008 when I think Barack Obama had just got elected into office.
Okay.
Wow.
That's wild.
And so what the video showed was like a series of black revolutionaries or black trailblazers, basically. So African Americans who, like Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, who is not an African American, but it's just black leaders, basically, yeah. Muhammad Ali. And it showed the whole thing in black and white, the whole video. But on the last clip, it goes from Martin Luther King to Barack Obama, and it transitions from black and white to color. And then at the end, it says "Think Different," and it's the it's the same narrative as the Apple commercial, so it's the same voiceover. And I sent that to Ramit, and he was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Like we have to do videos together," in all caps and stuff. And so. I've written, I also wrote scripts, and sent those to him in Google Doc. And I was like, what do you think of this as a video we could do? And he's like, I love it. We're going to do it. So you can just do the work. Just do the work. You don't have to ask them for permission, right? Like get enough of a first step that they're like, wow, this is already 50% done or whatever. And all they need is for me to give the stamp of approval. Like it's this good. I've seen terrible execution of this step, by the way. So,
like what?
The most notable one in my mind, it was so bad, and I almost didn't have the heart to tell this guy to like just give up. But he was. I said that a problem I had was I needed help redesigning my website, and so. This guy started making mock-ups of what I could turn my website into, and they were so bad. It looked like he'd made them in Microsoft Paint. Oof. Or like he just learned how to Photoshop. He clearly wasn't a designer. Like I'm not making fun of him as a person. It was just like he saw that I had a problem, so he went about solving it, even though he had zero skill in that realm. So like just because somebody has something they need help with doesn't mean you have to focus on that as the thing that you're going to help them with. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if they're like, I need a chef, I need a part-time chef, and you're not a cook, don't offer to cook for them.
Yeah, that would probably turn out kind of badly.
Right.
And well, I think there's an interesting bit there on the skills that you can offer because you mentioned that you were reaching out to Ramit, particularly with video editing, and then you also mentioned in the book that you had some web design and online marketing experience. But how
Mhm.
did you learn to do those things? Was it in school or just on your own on
Yeah,
the side?
great question. Totally on my own on the side. And the way I learned all of those things
Hmm.
is by shadowing my friends who knew how to do them.
Oh.
I would beg older friends of mine who, like, one of my friends was working at an ad agency.
Hmm.
And for a week straight, I just came in and I watched him do Photoshop. And then with video editing, I originally got my start in that by making funny videos for my high school. It's actually kind of a funny story. So my senior year of high school, I ran for student office because I wanted to be in charge of the pep rallies because the pep rallies just weren't they in my opinion they sucked. And so I wanted to control them and I wanted to have videos that were really funny that played at the beginning. And I wanted to make those videos. So I went out, I filmed all this great footage and it was really funny. But like a week before, I realized I have no way of editing this. I have no idea how to do this. And so I was like, oh man, I'm screwed. And then I met this guy who had a MacBook, or which at the time was called a PowerBook, I want to say. Uh, iMovie was relatively new
Hmm.
back then, and he and I got together every day after school and worked until 2 a.m. on that video. And I just watched him. He knew how to do it. It was a very slow process, right? Because computers were really slow, but um, it was fascinating to me and I loved it. And then I started doing it on my own. And then I started, I started making baseball videos of my baseball team and then family reunion videos. And then people were offering to pay me to make these videos. And that was my first business was making videos for people's events. So the easiest way to learn these skills is to sit down next to somebody who knows how to do it and just watch them and then have them hand you the reins every now and then.
And then you said that you kept improving it through these freelance side projects, which also helped
Yeah,
you sustain the free work, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
how were you getting those freelance jobs?
Yeah, I was just talking to. I started with my parents' friends,
Okay.
to be honest. I started with people who had money. uh,
It's a good market.
I started, I started blogging um, in 2008. I did it privately, kind of, or I never told anybody about it for 6 months. And then I started all of a sudden getting readers. And so I started getting offers from for work through my blog.
Mm.
Um, and that still comes every now and then, but it's not as frequent because I don't blog as much. But so that helped a little. What really would have what I should have done is just had a portfolio of some sort and just been very clear on like what I help people with. But yeah, I mean, I got those offers purely by quote unquote networking. Just talking to people, showing them my work, and doing. I also did some outreach, but I was getting enough inbound at some point that I didn't have to hustle to find work as much anymore. I was really just focused on building relationships with the guys that I really wanted to work with, so I could stop doing the work on the side and focus solely on that.
That's great. You do have a really good article on your blog on this topic that I like, and I think it's one sentence about networking,
Oh yeah, yeah,
where it's just I think What's the exact phrasing? It's something like real professionals don't network, they make friends and help people.
Yeah. Yeah, the best networkers I've ever found don't call it networking. They don't call it relationship building. They're just friends with people and they help them.
Yeah.
And I hate I hate how people go to networking events and throw around business cards like it's the ticket to their next paycheck. It's just creepy, And
Yeah.
I don't. The number of times I've had a business card over the course of the last 10 years is it's like once or twice, right?
Hmm.
I usually just talk to people and try and if I'm friends with them, I'm friends with them. If I'm not, I'm not.
Well, I think that ends up being pretty relevant to college students too, because
Yeah,
the traditional mold has you go to these career fairs and collect business cards and have these sort of artificial professional interactions, right?
yeah,
Do
yeah.
you do you think that this kind of outreach and even some of the free work stuff could work in more traditional careers? Have you seen anybody do that with something like
Oh yeah,
working with big
yeah,
companies?
definitely. Yeah, for sure. But I want to make a point on the career fair thing.
Okay, go ahead.
One of the quotes that has always stood out to me and is one of my favorite quotes of all time was Albert Einstein, who said, "Let no man be idolized." And I
Mm,
totally agree with that because we're all walking on the same earth. We're all just here like spontaneously. We're sharing this experience at the same time. You don't have to treat people like they're better than you. And I think that is the saddest part of going through a traditional school system and then getting to the career fair is you look around at all these people like they're the gatekeepers to me living a happy life. I
yeah,
have to impress them. I have to be on for them. I think, I don't. I'd have to ask uh, these guys if they agree, but I really believe that one of the things that helped me more than anything was I didn't look at anybody with starry eyes and like think they walked on water ever.
hmm,
I just thought, man, these guys are really smart. How fun, to work with these kinds of people. Um, I wanted to just play on their level. And I think everybody can do that and just view people more like this is a potential friend. What can we connect on that will, get us laughing and having a good time rather than just being so uptight. They don't like being this uptight, no one
right.
does.
Well, and it probably feels weird and kind of yucky to get treated like you're some special important person because I
Oh, it's
imagine,
disgusting.
yeah, because if you're up at a level where that would happen to you, you probably don't feel like you're someone, particularly amazing or special. You're used to it. And then
Exactly.
you can probably feel the
It's
false behavior.
manipulation.
Yeah, exactly.
It really is. I mean, like every guy can relate to like an instance where they're talking to a really attractive girl
Hmm.
who's giving them more time than they think they're worth. And all of a sudden they're like, "Oh God." They turn on the manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Like on whether it's subtle or heavy-handed. Um, in the irony is you do so much better when you just let go,
Yeah.
when you just stop caring so much about the outcome and just care about connecting in the moment and being your best in the moment. Um, yeah, yeah, it's a much easier, lighter experience. You could still hustle, you could still do great work, but you shouldn't be so concerned about manipulating people because it doesn't work. People have a great bullshit detector. All of us are really good at it.
Right.
Even the people who that's become their reality, like surrounded by sycophants, like I'm sure Donald Trump is this way. Um, they still have a great BS detector.
Yeah. Well, and it comes back to that problem where if you're behaving that way, you're going to have to be normal with this person eventually
Yeah.
if the relationship
Like you don't want to
continues.
live in that reality the whole time.
Yeah. Maybe some people do live in that reality, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to have to put on a facade every single day just to maintain certain relationships.
Yeah. No, it'd be miserable.
Yeah. This is a good transition to some of the work that you did around like anxiety and play.
Hmm.
Uh, and what I was really curious about was, and we're going to get into some of that stuff soon, but what really made this transition for you where you were really interested in helping people live kind of more playfully and help manage their anxiety in this way?
Yeah. So did this book have any benefit for you now? I've met you a number of times and we've hung out. You seem like a pretty calm, relaxed guy, but I don't know if this book held any benefit for you or not.
It has, in the same way that what I really like as a reminder for this is there's a great essay by Bertrand Russell in praise of idleness. I feel like
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
haven't
I
read it,
love
you have
that.
to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I like about Play It Away, your first book on this, is that it's a really just good reminder that it's okay to not be like running at 100% all the time,
Right.
because I think it's, at least for me and obviously for you, and I'm sure for a lot of people listening, it's easy to get sucked into trying to fill every hour with work and then feeling guilty if you're doing something
Yeah.
that's not at least tangentially productive, right? Where even your
Mhm.
hobbies have to be beneficial. Like, oh, at least
Yeah.
I'm not working, but I'm learning something cool, right? Like
Right.
photography. And so I think it's a really good reminder that not only is it okay to goof off and have fun, but it's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. There's tons of health benefits. So,
Yeah.
so to answer your question, like, how did I originally get into this? So um, after there was a period where I was working with Tim where I was put in charge of hosting an event where 130 authors and entrepreneurs from all over the world were coming to this book marketing event
Yeah.
that we were doing, right? And they'd each paid $10,000 to come. So a little bit of pressure, right? I was 25 years old in charge of this. And my experience hosting events boiled down to like, hey, I threw a kegger in college, that. So I was like, I'm terrified, right?
Right.
And luckily, I had some help from an amazing event planner named Susan Dupre, who literally helped Steve Jobs launch the original iPhone. Like she's an amazing
Wow.
human being and super on top of her game. Still, there were so many details that went into it that I started to realize as the event was getting closer that I literally couldn't afford to sleep the whole time during the event because um, if something went wrong or whatever, like somebody needed to pick up the slack, and I was sort of in that linchpin position that I knew all the moving pieces. So I secretly ordered some modafinil from an online pharmaceutical store, and
Don't try
it
this at
helped
home,
me.
everyone.
Right, do not take it. I don't recommend it, even though it is a heavily abused drug like Adderall. But
Yeah.
um, it got me through the event on, over the course of 96 hours, I slept a total of six and no one could tell. And in fact, everybody was like, literally gave me a standing ovation at the end of the event. And they were like, you did such a great job. And I was hearing stuff like people were asking me to my face, where can I get a Charlie? Right. Because I was just so on top of the ball. And so I was proud. I was proud of what I did, but I got home from that and I was messed up. I was in a bad state, and all this stuff that had led up to that moment, the months of drinking too much coffee, 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day, the months of not really moving, not really exercising, having most of my interactions with people be through screens, not really getting outside, not sleeping enough. Everything just kind of it came to a head, and I was a wreck. And um, we didn't have much of a break between the end of the event and getting to work on Tim's next book, The 4 Hour Chef. I was like, look, I don't know if I can make it through this, basically. And we were working, and I thought, I'll just get to the deadline, right? That the publisher had set. And then all on the same weekend, my uncle died, a close friend attempted suicide, and the deadline got pushed back 6 months. And it was like, nope, you can't do this anymore. Like, it was just too much.
Yeah.
And I just kind of fell apart. And I told him, like, I'm sorry, dude, I need like at least a week off because I'm just exhausted. I'm falling apart. I don't know if I can do this. And I came back from that week, and I was shaking when I went to meet up with him, because I decided I had to quit because I felt broken. I felt dead inside. I started having panic attacks shortly after. I'd never really experienced this level of fear and anxiety and like dread. I felt like I was in fight or flight mode. Like everything was a potential threat to my survival. Like even my friends, I would look at suspiciously, and I was super paranoid. I felt like I could feel everything way too much. And I felt like what was worse, I felt like I was contagious. I thought, whatever I have going on in me is contagious. So I didn't want to expose anybody to it. So when my friends would invite me to stuff, I would just like turn them down because I just didn't want them to catch whatever I was going through.
Huh.
And when you have a panic attack, it feels like you're having a heart attack. And so you tell yourself you better go to the hospital, make sure you're not dying. And I mean, you talk to anybody who's dealt with severe anxiety, and they'll tell you it just totally robs you of life. And
Right.
it can cost a lot of money too. I mean, I know people who've been pulled off of planes because of anxiety, or they've locked themselves in a hotel room for a week, or it can destroy your marriage.
Yeah.
It can cause you to lose your job. And the funny thing is, well, not funny, but I mean, anxiety affects like 1 in 5 people. They self-describe it as having anxiety. So what ultimately led me down that path of encouraging people to play was trying everything for 2 years, everything you think you're supposed to do when you have anxiety. I read every book. I did yoga, meditation, deep breathing exercises. I saw therapists. I went and did flotation tanks. I got massages. I did intense form of exercises. I did long distance runs. I volunteered. I was doing these different holistic type of therapies, naturopathic stuff. I took every supplement you can think of. I tried psychedelic drugs. I even took a 6-week course specifically for men who have anxiety. I read every book you can think of, and nothing worked. And it was so frustrating because I really felt like if this is the way the rest of my life is going to be, life is going to suck. And it wasn't that I wanted to commit suicide or anything, but I was like, I am just ready for life to be done at some point, because like I started smoking cigarettes pretty regularly because I was just like, let's hurry this up.
Wow.
it was really bad.
Yeah.
I was so tired of it, and I was just so exhausted.
And sorry, just to clarify, but this was still going on after you had stopped working with Tim, right?
Yeah, this was after I quit. I mean, it got worse after I quit working with Tim. And here was the other crazy thing, right? Is like I felt like I had this dual life, right? Where I started working with an app startup with my friends Chad and Jason. We had a successful launch a few months later where we raised or we earned 2.6 million in revenue in our launch in 10 days. You know,
Crazy.
like
Yeah.
by all superficial on the surface measures, like if you saw me on Facebook during that time, you'd be like, dang, Charlie's killing it. Quit working with Tim Ferriss to go work at a startup, and they're just, like it
It's the,
was
the danger of social media. Yeah.
right. Yeah. You know, but I was a mess, man, and no one really knew, and I didn't tell anybody. And then I remember my girlfriend at the time one night, she just kind of broke down and she was like, Charlie, like, what happened to you? Like, you're not the guy I met all those months ago. Like, what is wrong? And I just told her, I feel dead inside all the time and I have no idea how to fix it. And I remember she started crying because and I remember it because I felt jealous because I couldn't cry. Like I physically couldn't cry.
Wow.
And um and so this just kept going on. And then one day what changed everything was I stumbled upon a book called Play by Stuart Brown, which is a book on just like the exploration of play in its evolutionary benefits to every species, the species that play, right?
Hmm.
And what I learned from that book is that human beings are the most playful species on the planet. We play. I mean, you can deny work, right? Like you can take work away from human beings, and they will play.
Right.
And you cannot deny play. Like every human being plays, and it's how we learn. It's how we develop empathy and compassion. It's how we develop skills. It's how we explore our world and develop a sense of security in the world. Play is like this essential thing. And the crazy thing is Stuart Brown found out the importance of play because he studied mass murderers. He studied serial killers, and he found the thing that they had in common was a childhood that had been severely deprived of play opportunities.
That's
And
wild. Yeah.
it's crazy, right? And when I started reflecting on the things in this book, like it was a major light bulb moment for me because I realized, oh my God, like I started off doing my work from this place of like having fun, connecting with people. And over time, it became about being serious and productive and making money and like outcome, and being highly efficient and effective.
Yeah.
And I was so good at my job that I never turned off and I never gave myself time to like decompress. And I didn't have that same spirit of play. And so I just thought, I'm just going to add play back into my life. So I'm going to look back on my childhood. What were the things that I found myself doing constantly that no adults were forcing me to do, or I wasn't being graded? And they were my main sources of fun. And those were like playing catch and playing home run derby, so baseball, creating art, making making films like short films, funny films, and playing practical jokes. And so I started adding those into my life like 20 minutes a day. I went and played catch instead of meeting up for coffee. Instead of having a meeting, we would go outside and play catch, or play frisbee, or whatever.
Was it ever weird suggesting doing that instead of coffee?
The first time I suggested it, somebody wrote back in an email. They were like, "Dude, that's kind of weird. No thanks." And then they wrote an email immediately after, and they were like, "Just messing with you. That sounds awesome. Like I can't wait."
Nice.
And so it was a relief. I found it was a relief for a lot of people that they preferred to do something other than just like, hey, let's sit around and talk about how successful we are.
Well, it goes back to
Uh,
what you were saying before about genuine interactions, right?
yeah, exactly. Like you would never hear two kids saying like, hey, do you want to go head down to the playground and
Talk over our juice
bring
boxes.
yeah, talk over juice boxes and maybe hand out our business cards. Um, just wouldn't happen. So it was like this immense sense of relief. And then I started taking improv lessons, which was just like second nature to me, right? It was
Mhm.
totally like aligned with my personality. And it was like the best medicine for me at the time because it allowed me to tap back into this state that I used to be in, which was like just have fun. Like nothing's wrong, nothing fails. Say yes to everything, right? Get, perfect is your enemy. Just do stuff.
Yeah.
And it was so liberating because I started interacting with everyone that way. Again, I started being playful with them, and it was like they would be playful back. No one's when you're playful with people, you give them an invitation to have a fun interaction, and that's like everybody does that. If you invite them to do it, almost everyone will do it back with you, but so few of them will initiate. So I found my world was like much less scary when I did that. The anxiety, the fear started dropping off, and I just kept doing this stuff until a few weeks later I was like, holy shit, I'm back to normal. Like I almost didn't notice it. Like I just feel so much better. I feel normal again.
Yeah.
And big part of that was cutting back on coffee consumption. Big part of that was getting to bed on time, and getting a full night's rest and taking better care of myself. But the core of it was realizing that the world wasn't a jail, that life wasn't a prison sentence, that life could be a playground and everybody could be your potential playmates and treating them that way. And it may sound a little childish, right? Just the wording of it, but it's the truth. That's the way we all start out, assuming, we grow up in a loving environment.
What about people who are, stuck in a job or a lifestyle that they don't like or they aren't excited about? Because I think in this latest book, Play for a Living, you have all of these wonderful quotations and illustrations of these very successful people talking about treating work as play. But I think somebody could say, like, well, it's easy for someone like Bill Murray or any of them to say, oh, yeah, well, work is fun. It should be playful because they're doing what they love, right? I'm stuck behind a desk doing, PowerPoint edits for an investment bank on Wall Street. Like, how do I treat this as play?
Right. Yeah. So I have a bunch of things to say to that. For one, it's not always easy for Bill Murray to say that because it took work to get there, right? But the attitude is a choice. Again, this goes back
Yeah.
to like, is life a prison sentence for you or not? Because if you are in a job that legitimately feels like a prison sentence every day, you have to ask yourself, is it because I have made this into a prison sentence in my mind, or is it legitimately awful and soul crushing? Like, because some people in that same exact situation will be playful, joyful, happy. And if you're not one of those people, you have to be honest with yourself about whether you're choosing to make it into a sentence or if it actually is horrible, right? I
Right.
mean, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Amazing book.
Right. I mean, it depends on your state of mind.
Just to quickly explain what's going on in Man's Search for Meaning.
In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, he was a Holocaust survivor, but he found meaning in the experience and he was able to live through it. And he was able to inspire and help millions of others simply with that message that anything can have meaning, but you have to find it. And yeah, were you going to add
Oh no,
something?
I was going to say I think that he found too that the key difference between the prisoners in the concentration camps who survived and didn't were the ones who felt like they had some meaning and purpose, right?
They had purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm saying is you get to choose your attitude of seriousness or playful,
Mm.
right? And I think it's for me, I think it is irresponsible to go through my life with a sad, long face, serious all the time, worrying about stuff, thinking of the things that weren't fair. I think that's irresponsible. Like if you're playful, if you stay playful, things are easier. You stay in the moment. You let life come to you and you react accordingly or you play with it. But if you're going around with a long face, you're dwelling on the past or you're dwelling on an unwritten future. You're not in the moment usually.
Do you think that you would have been able to excel at these jobs with Ramit and Tucker and Tim if you had this like more playful mentality, or do you think that being a
Oh,
workaholic
I
was
did.
necessary?
I did excel at those jobs. And the reason I worked hard around the clock is because I loved what I was doing. I mean, even with Play for a Living, right?
Hmm.
Like I've got a full-time gig that I work during the day, and I was coming home and I was moonlighting this, the Play for a Living stuff,
Yeah.
staying up late. And here's the thing: when I didn't have an outlet to plug into, when I didn't have something that I could recharge with and get excited about, I felt like no matter how much sleep I got, I never had enough energy, right?
Mm.
And here I've been lately getting on average like 4.5 hours of sleep, and I'm still like waking up excited, still going to bed, to like excited. And I think that's another important element is like, let's say you do have that job that you're not that crazy about, that you're bored about, you can still have something that does charge you up, that you do get excited about. And if you don't have that, you don't have that sense of fun going on in your life and excitement and something that gives you joy, it's hard to get excited about anything. So you have to have something like that. I mean, if I was working at a job I hated, I would have to have improv or something going on to
Right.
give me something to look forward to and get excited about, right? What do you use to keep you excited or having fun?
For me,
Yeah.
a few things. I actually, with my housemates in San Francisco, we play board games a lot at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and that's
Which
really
ones?
fun. Particularly this one called Pandemic. I don't know if you've played it.
Okay.
The cool
No.
thing, the cool thing about that game is that if you've ever played Plague Inc. on your phone, the really popular phone game where like a disease is trying to kill all of humanity, Pandemic is sort of the opposite, where you're trying to prevent the disease. And the cool thing about it as a board game is that it's cooperative instead of competitive. So a game like
Ah.
a game like Settlers of Catan is a lot of fun, but at the end of it, somebody's going to be pissed off, and like there might be a fight, whatever. But what's kind of fun with this one is that you're actually working together against the game, and
Cool.
yeah, we usually
Wow.
play.
It's got a perfect 5-star rating out of 2,000 customer reviews on Amazon.
Yeah, you should pick it up. It's probably the most fun
I
board game
have.
I've ever played. I really like that. I really like longboarding, so
Mhm. Yeah.
I discovered that in high school as a really amazing way to relax because it does require pretty much your whole attention, especially if you're on a boosted board
Yeah.
and going 20 miles an hour
Oh
around
my gosh. Yeah.
drivers and SF. You can't be distracted or be in your head when you're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eh,
I mean, a lot of people attest to surfing as
Yeah.
being. I mean, it puts you in a meditative state. There's There's a great short film on the New York Times called Slow Mo,
Okay.
Slomo, and it's about one of the happiest people on earth. Basically, he's this old man who everyone just sees him in Santa Monica riding his roller skates, and they think that guy's crazy or he's homeless or whatever. But he's formerly a doctor who was just was miserable. He realized he was working around the clock for bigger and bigger paychecks. He just wasn't happy, and he started thinking about what are the things that really make me happy. And he said, it's just skating on the beach. And he retired and started doing that. And he's like, I wish I could explain in medical terms. I don't know why, but I keep becoming more and more joyful, happier and happier every
Hmm.
single day. And he started talking about that there's this thing that happens in your brain, your eardrum. The balance gets when you're doing activities like longboarding or surfing or riding on skates on one foot the way he does. It has this effect in your mind that becomes very meditative. It's like moving meditation. So
Is it from trying to balance or?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I mean it clears your mind basically.
Huh.
So the desired state that a lot of people are going for when meditating, sitting still, they can reach that through those types of movements if they're doing them constantly. So a lot of people attest to that. A lot of people attest to playing the drums as one of the best ways of play in terms of mental health. It gives you a physical workout. It's music, so there's creativity going on.
Drums in particular, more so than other
Drums in
instruments?
particular are the most physically intensive.
Ah, okay.
So they tend to rank the highest in terms of mental health benefits.
Got it. What if somebody's listening and they're saying like, "Oh, it's great for Nat and Charlie that they can go play all
I
these
would say,
games."
first of all, stop making excuses. God,
But yeah.
you're human just like us. Get over it.
But, if they don't have 30, 60 minutes, if they feel like they don't have 30, 60 minutes a day to goof off, are there any really simple ways to like bring a bit more play into their lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, go on walking meetings instead of sitting around.
Oh, that makes such a big
You know,
difference.
just do it outside.
Yeah.
Look at the trees while you're walking around and talking. And actually, this is one of the simplest productivity hacks, right?
Mhm.
I mean, Stanford actually did a study on this where they found that people were able to create 2 times more creative like ideas when they were on walks versus when they were sitting. So get the blood moving while you're in these meetings. Um, I mean, there's a reason coloring books took off a few years ago as a type of book that adults use. Coloring books for adults. It's an easy one.
Yeah.
Those are two that I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, I list a bunch of recommendations in Play It Away.
Oh, that's true. You've got a pretty long list in there that people should definitely check out. What about going out drinking and partying? Does that count as play?
It can. I think it's more of a suspension of unhappiness than anything.
Okay.
It's like unless you really truly get a lot of joy from it because you're with your friends and you're bonding with them. I
Mhm.
think the important part of play is that you're bonding with friends, right? Um, I think play needs to be social, so or it should be with people that you like. Because here's the thing. Here was one thing that stood out to me. Is There's a book called The Power of Clan where they looked at the this community of Italian American immigrants or Italian immigrants in a town called Roseto, I believe in Pennsylvania. And this community had the lowest rate of heart attacks in the United States. And they were like, how the hell is this happening? Because these people are eating fried meats, like meats fried in lard.
Yeah.
They smoke like chimneys. They drink, till they're drunk multiple times a night. They work in coal mines. Like every traditional factor that says these people should be having heart attacks was there, but they weren't. And the reason was because they were really close socially. Everybody knew everybody. They were all friends for the most part. They took care of each other. It was a strong community. And I think this is the biggest battle that Americans face is this lack of a sense of community. It's
Yeah.
really challenging, especially when you got 95% of new jobs in America don't come from the government. They come from people who are now freelancers.
It's
They're
95%.
90. It's close to that. I think it
Jeez.
might be 92%.
Yeah.
Right. So any rhetoric you hear from politicians of them creating jobs is bullshit. It's normal people like you who are creating jobs for themselves. And the challenge with that is that you can sit all by yourself and work alone
Right.
and hustle. But if you do that for too long, you disconnect yourself from your social health. And social health equals mental health. So you have to stay connected.
Was that difficult for you when you were doing some of these remote projects?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's still a struggle. To be honest, it was a major factor in deciding to go work with Book in a Box.
Mm.
So I just said, I would much rather just work with my friends during the day, not have to, because I was running a thing called the Recess Project to ensure that I was doing at least one thing a week with people I liked, and that kind of grew into this other thing, and then I was just like, this is becoming another job because now people are showing up that I don't know, and sometimes it feels like work, like I got to host and entertain them, and so yeah.
Yeah. What has been really effective for meeting people for you in terms of getting over that loneliness, like meeting people outside of the job?
One of the most effective is asking a good friend
Mm-hmm.
to introduce you to their two favorite people in the city.
That's actually exactly what I did when I moved to Austin.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people you really like tend to know other people that you're probably really going to like too.
Definitely.
So, I mean, that's by far the easiest way. Other than that, it's hit or miss. Frankly, if you sign up for a group, you have to really love the activity, right? So I remember taking like an urban gardening course, and I showed up and I was like, why am I here? What am I doing? I just left after an hour. So I was like, I don't like to garden, and there's no amount of this that I enjoy enough to stick around to meet these people. So
Right.
So improv was easy for me because I loved that, and
it's a very social activity to start with.
yeah, yeah, and I've thought about starting a home run derby club where you just meet up on a baseball field and do batting practice and drink some beers and listen to music.
When I saw that in the book, I really wanted to go do it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh man, that sounds great right now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really fun. But yeah, I mean, pick the activity that brings you joy, that you love, and then the thing we did the other night that was great was we had just a potluck, and we played games, but we all hung out at our place, and I mean, be the hub where people go to have fun, and just make a commitment, do it every couple of weeks.
Yeah. When you get good at hosting stuff, it's a really fun experience and a great way to build new and better connections with your friends.
Yeah. For inspiration on that, watch the documentary Supermensch. It's really good.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's another thing too, where kind of like you were mentioning before about the authentic connecting.
Yeah.
Hosting events and bringing groups of people together is something that everyone wants to do, and everyone's waiting for
Mhm.
somebody else to do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not like if you do the potluck thing, it doesn't cost a lot of money. Um, yeah, just put these things together. Just try it out.
A really fun version of uh, that we both went to in Austin with Zach was that Thanksgiving in September.
Hmm.
I think if anybody wants ideas, yeah, just do another Thanksgiving at a random date and have everyone bring food. It was a really good time.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
is there anything that you believed as is anything in particular that you believed as a student or right after you graduated pretty strongly that you now know is false?
Oh my God. Do you have another hour? Um,
Particularly something around like the college system. And I think we've touched on
yeah,
some of it with
sure.
the recession proof graduate stuff, but
Yeah. Something I realized too late in college
mhm.
is to start doing your own work and to create your own agenda. So just because you chose a schedule of classes that fits your sleep schedule
Yeah.
or your partying schedule, that doesn't mean you've done the work and you're doing the work, right? You just selected from a menu that was predetermined for you, and you're following that that agenda. Um, I started going to classes I wasn't signed up for, like film classes. I was a marketing major, and I wasn't allowed to go to certain film classes, and so I just would go to them and sit in on them. And when they would have quizzes, I would just get up and walk out. um, so it was pretty fun, and I never got in trouble for it.
Yeah.
That was easy. The other thing I started doing was I started going to in college. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I didn't even know really the word for entrepreneur back then. I just knew that I wanted to have a career where I was basically making gifts for other people and having them happily pay me money for them,
Mhm.
because they loved what I created. So I I remember volunteering to be to keep time for presentations for business ideas and getting to sit with the venture capitalists and the investors in the room. So these students would come in, present their business idea, and then they would walk out after I said time. And the venture capitalists would sit around talking about what made the idea good, what made it bad. And I would just sit there taking notes.
Oh, that's
And I was
cool.
like, this is awesome. And I started working on my own ideas after that. I started trying to make those work. And the issue I had there was like I was working on business ideas,
Mhm.
rather than doing something I really like cared about. But I think everybody goes through that at some point
Yeah.
where it's like I made this to try and make money and not because I actually got it. So
And for some reason, it
um,
never works quite as well when you try to
it
do something just for the money.
no, and in fact, I would be amazed to like read. Well, I could probably tell you. Basically, everyone who's an Amazon seller for a living probably does that because they don't,
Yeah. They're
because they're just making crazy money.
probably not
Uh,
super passionate about importing dish rags.
right. It's just I love how many housewives I'm helping. Um, Gosh. Yeah, so I think just realize that you have control of your life to start designing it whenever you decide to do it, and selecting from a menu that other people have given you is not designing your life. You know,
Yeah.
it feels like it is, but it's not. So other than that, have fun, make friends. You don't need college to succeed, that's for sure, but certainly you can plant a lot of seeds there.
I think that is a fantastic note to wrap up on. Uh, I mean, first off, thanks so much for coming on and talking about all of this. This was a lot of fun for me, and I think super valuable for everyone listening. If people want to find out more about what you're up to, where should they go online?
Cool. Thanks, Nat. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you listening to me rant and rave. So,
Hey, you've got great stories.
thanks, man. Yeah, if people want to, the best place to go right now is Kickstarter. Our book, Play for a Living, is already completely funded. You will get a copy if you back it. So it's a great career book. It shows you how to do more of what you love, how to make a living doing what you love. Other than that, you can find me at charliehoehn.com.
It's Hoehn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we'll have links to all of that in the show notes. I'm also going to plug your other two books since you didn't, Play It Away and Recession Proof Graduate.
Yes. Thank you for looking out.
We'll have those linked as well. And yeah, Charlie, thanks so much again. This is a lot of fun. And hopefully back in Austin soon, we can hang out again in person.
Yeah, sure thing, man. Thanks again, Nat.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nat Chat. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to Nat Chat in iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Second, if you're trying to take advantage of some of the information from this episode, be sure you check out the show notes at nateliason, nateliason.com/podcast, and find a friend, because implementing a lot of this stuff is much easier if you have somebody to do it with. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode and you've been enjoying other episodes of the podcast, please leave it a review on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your casts, so that more people can find it. This is the best way for it to get some more exposure and to make sure that I can keep bringing these episodes to you. With that, thank you and have an awesome rest of your day.